welcome to another Thursday night Real Monsters. I'm SK Barrett, your host, with Wes Hobrick
Hello, hello, hello.
and special guest Kelly Evans.
Special regular guest now. Hey guys, how's it going?
It doesn't make you any
Regular,
it doesn't make you any less special though.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
special regular guest.
For real monsters, you guys are sweeties.
Well, thank you.
And oh my God, do we have a killer show tonight? This guy, this Holmes dude, which Holmes wasn't even his real name, by the way,
Nope,
but that's
was
how he's
not.
known. Um, this guy was spectacular in a lot of ways. But before we do that, let's do This Week in Crime History.
Dun, dun, dun.
Uh,
Because we're cheap and we don't have sound effects. June 14th, 1789, the mutiny on the HMS Bounty survivors reached Timor, which was the end of a 7,400-kilometer journey for them.
Jeez.
Whoa.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah, that was
it's
a real thing.
definitely.
They must have
Y-
hated each other after that much time on a boat.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Have you guys seen The Terror on AMC? It's not about that, but it's about another
No.
nautical theme when they're going through the Arctic looking for the Northwest Passage. It's pretty
Nah,
good.
I don't like boat movies. I'm not a fan of water. Not a fan of anything boat naval related. Sorry, I was in sea cadets, believe it or not. My dad was in the Navy, but me, no, forget it. No more. That's it.
Oh, there you go. Uh, June 14th, 1962, Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler, kills his
Oh.
first victim, Anna Slessers. June 14th, 1988, a woman sues Chuck Berry, musician Chuck Berry,
Yeah?
for $5 million, alleging he hit her.
Oh my God.
June 14th, 1984, Zsa Zsa Gabor arrested for slapping a Beverly Hills motorcycle cop.
I remember that. That was
Oh my
hilarious.
God.
Yeah,
I remember her, yeah, her apology and everything. She came out on TV and apologized. It was a big deal.
dang. Uh, June 14th, 2017, Representative Steve Scalise is shot at a congressional baseball game by a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Oh my
Oh yeah.
God.
That was horrible, man. I remember
Yeah.
that. June 15th, 1648, Margaret Jones hanged in Boston for witchcraft. First such
Ooh,
execution in the colony.
jeez.
But
We
not
should
the
use
last.
No,
you guys need to do a witchcraft, a special Salem show.
I was thinking the same. Yeah, we should definitely do that.
Yep.
Dude, at Salem, we could even bring in the European trials.
Oh God,
Uh,
yeah. I will so be there for that.
June 15th, 1920, Elias Clayton, Elmer Jackson, and Isaac McGee, three African American circus workers, are taken from their jail and lynched in, want to guess where?
Alabama? Mississippi?
Duluth, Minnesota.
Oh my God.
What?
That blew my mind.
Wow.
Duluth, Minnesota, which half my family's from there. I know that state well. It
Huh.
blows my mind they would have a lynching there. But um, June 15th, 1985, Rembrandt's Danae is attacked by an insane person. Threw acid on it and he scratched the painting
Ew.
or tore it with the
Yeah.
knife. Let's see.
Somebody really didn't like art.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he said his motive was for that, but June 16th, 1944, George Stinney, an African American boy aged 14, is the first wrongly executed youth in the country.
Huh.
Executed in South Carolina for allegedly, which he later found out he didn't do it, murdering three white girls. 14 years old. He
Wow.
was
I'm gonna
executed.
say I'm gonna say he's the first wrongly executed on record because I'm pretty sure there were ones
By
before.
by the state.
Yeah. Okay.
hmm see, June 16th, 1987. Bernard Goetz, the New York subway gunman who killed 4 black youth who tried to rob him, acquitted on all charges but gun possession.
Yeah, that was a
Oh my
big
God.
deal.
Yeah.
Wow.
June 17, 1933, the Union Station Massacre, Kansas City, Missouri. 4 FBI agents gunned down by gangsters who were trying to free bank robber Frank Nash. Nash also died in that. Which, if
Oh,
you go to
wow.
Union Station today, you can still see the bullets in the walls, in the concrete.
No
Can
kidding.
you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Let's see. 1939, June 17th, Eugene Wiedemann becomes the last public execution by guillotine in France.
Huh.
June 17th, 1972, 5 White House operatives arrested for burglary
At
in
the
Watergate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you
June
know what?
7th.
You know how
Oh, go
close
ahead.
that was. The only reason that ever became a story was because of this one reporter who was waiting on a different trial, and he sat in the courtroom just killing time when these
Oh,
guys
wow.
were arraigned, and he
Oh,
goes,
dang.
and he's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Oh, wow. Man, that had to be somebody at the Washington Post. They pretty much scooped everybody on that for a
Yeah.
little bit. But June 17th, 1994, following a low-speed chase, O.J. Simpson is arrested and
Yeah.
indicted for murder.
Yeah.
June 17th, 2015, 9 killed in a mass shooting at a predominantly African-American church in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, this next one really got me. June 18th, 1873, Susan B. Anthony fined $100 for trying to vote in the 1872 presidential election.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That is over $2,100 in today's money.
Jeez.
That seems just way disproportionate.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be punished anyway for that, but even still, that just seems way out of whack to me. But
Does.
June 18th, 1953, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg executed for espionage.
Yep. That's the case that Einstein got involved with.
Yep. And the last one, June 20th, 1893, Lizzie Borden is acquitted.
Yay.
And nobody
Right.
believes it.
I'm pro Lizzie. She did it. I don't believe she did it.
No,
Oh.
but nobody. Yeah, but most people do think she did it.
Yeah, probably.
Well, her jury didn't.
Right.
There wasn't
It is
enough.
true.
But
Yeah, there
the
wasn't
nursery
enough
rhyme.
evidence. Well, yeah, I know, but the nursery rhyme they always come out afterwards. Like the guy we're going to talk about today, most of the really bad stuff about him, a lot of it came out like in the pulp fiction, like 50 years afterwards. So the nursery rhyme always comes after.
Well, true.
And when you look at the actual case, there was actually no evidence. So all the stuff you think you know, go back and take a look at it. It's actually really interesting.
Alrighty. So.
Sorry, pro Lizzie. Someone's got to stand up for the poor woman.
Well, I mean, she was acquitted, right?
She was, yep.
But she. Anyway, we're digressing.
Anyway, yeah,
on a different topic.
Day.
That's for a different week.
Yep.
So, who's this HH Holmes guy, and why do we care enough to talk about him?
Because he's awesome. He's known as America's first serial killer. Now you can debate that. I mean, especially you guys, because you know a lot more about some of the serial killers than I do. But he's generally labeled America's first serial killer. And he's not what you think of as your typical serial killer. Like most people, they're creepy. They start, they typically stalk people first, and then they escalate to killing people. And
Right.
generally they have a similar MO with everything. This guy was just clever and sophisticated and apparently a ladies' man. He got involved with insurance fraud. He got involved in theft. He got involved in selling illegal goods. And this is all before he got involved in complete and utter mass murder. He created a building specifically for killing.
And wait, with the illegal goods, let's be clear, a lot of that is we're talking about bodies he sold.
Well, he actually got put
His
in prison.
victims. Yeah,
Yeah, well, he actually got put in prison at one point for selling illegal goods, not bodies. Just he sold furniture that didn't belong to him, and he actually got put in prison for a few months. And that'll come into the story because that's kind of significant. But we should probably talk about his beginnings and things like that because
let's do that.
there's a lot of discussion about his beginnings. So he was actually born Herman Webster Munster
Mudgett.
Mudgett. It's a mouthful.
I'd change my name too if that were my birth name, I think.
Yeah, seriously. Although I do like the Munster. Come on, the Webster Munster. It just sounds the name. It just I don't know.
It's not Munster. It's Mudgett. Mudgett.
Oh, I thought it was Herman Webster Munster Mudgett.
Nope, Mudgett. Herman Webster Mudgett.
Oh, okay. I didn't. Okay.
Herman
So he
Munster.
Yeah, you're getting confused with the TV show there, Kelly.
Damn it! You know what? That's probably. Oh my God, that's probably. Oh my God, the brains work in mysterious ways. Okay, so he was basically doing his killing around the same time as Jack the Ripper was in London. To give you an idea, so he was born in 1861, and he graduated high school when he was 16. Now there are a couple of different stories about his upbringing. A lot of people said he had an incredibly cruel father. They were both. What were they? What were they? They were very religious. His mother was brought up the kids with like a very religious upbringing. I think they were Methodist, and the father was apparently very strict. There's stories about how he would torture animals, and he was cruel. You know, he was raped by family relatives, and he was beaten by his father. But I've also read some academic papers that say there's actually no evidence to suggest that all came out years and years later. In fact, he himself never claimed that he was bullied or anything by his parents. So one of the things that brings him to the forefront of everybody's attention is, he tortured animals, and he possibly killed a childhood friend. He pushed him off a step, and he, went into the forest and, did experiments on animals and things like that. And it's like, well, okay, it might be true, but there's no contemporary evidence for it. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay.
So he basically, he married at 17 to his first wife, Clara Lovering, and they had a son, and he actually grew up normal, became an accountant, and we don't hear very much from him. He went to university for a year and then dropped out because he said he had problems with the university. And then the following year, he rejoined university, but this time he went to the University of Michigan Department of Medicine and Surgery. So he was at this point interested in medicine, interested in surgery, and he worked in the hospital with one of the janitors. The hospital was $200 a year, which I used one of those calculators online, and that's about $6,000 in our money. So he needed the money. It was an expensive school. And so he got involved with the janitor in a trade in dead bodies. So the bodies that would come in for the school to use, he got involved in, like, where did these bodies come from? And he learned about the illicit trade in dead bodies and got involved in it, and eventually learned how to make money that way. He also, at that point, got a classmate of his involved in an insurance fraud. They came up with 3 corpses that had been donated to the museum for study, to the university for study. And they made up a story about a mother, daughter, and father. His kind of typical insurance scam was a family thing. There was an accident. And they actually got some money out of it, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. He graduated 2 years later. He didn't graduate at the top. In fact, it was debated whether he should actually graduate at all. So he was like at the very bottom.
Okay.
And during this time, Clara moved away, his wife, because apparently he was not very nice to her at all. He was very cruel to her. She moved away back to New York. And over the next 2 years, he defrauded life insurance companies while he was in school. And then he moved to New York. He was still defrauding life insurance companies. At one point in his career, he was under 50 investigations for life insurance
Oh,
fraud.
oh,
Um, so it was a big way for him. He learned quite early it was an easy way for him to make money. So he moved to New York and he was seen with a boy in the town. The boy later disappeared, and Holmes claimed that the boy went home to visit his parents, but then he quickly left town and moved to Philadelphia. He started working at a drugstore there. Another boy died, and he said, "Oh no, nothing to do with me," and then quickly left town again, um, and ends up in Chicago. And this is where it starts getting interesting because, first of all, he marries another woman named Murda Belknap. Now, after he marries her, he claims that he sends divorce papers to his first wife. Now, there's no evidence she actually got them. So now technically he's married to two women. Um,
okay.
he, so they both lived in Illinois, but he spent most of his time in Chicago. He worked at a drugstore. He was a really, really super good employee, and eventually bought the drugstore, and then made enough money through the insurance fraud and the
Oh,
drugstore to buy an empty plot across the street, and this is where he builds his hotel.
well, see, the drugstore has another twist to it, and that is that he became an employee there when he found out that the owner was dying of cancer, and he started working there, and then he weaseled his
Uh,
way, you know,
Yeah.
into the good graces of the widow, and offered to buy out the drugstore after he passed away, and then he murdered her,
no,
and
actually, no,
and
no, that's, no, they both lived well into the 20th century.
that's not what
That's another,
I read.
no, that's another one of those things that he did not kill her and he didn't actually die either. So yeah, again, with this kind of thing, there's like 15 different sources for things. So some people say,
Hmm.
yes, he did kill them, but apparently someone checked the records and he didn't.
Oh, well.
So that's, yeah. I'll have to find out where I read that because that's in one of the 4 or 5 papers I read. I was reading some. A lot of people write papers about this guy. Like PhD students write papers about this guy, criminologists and stuff. But
Wow.
anyway, I read that's one of the fallacies that came out, that he didn't actually kill them. They actually lived well into the 20th century.
Really?
But anyway, yeah, that's, yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
if they're, being alive is a pretty good argument against being murdered.
well, yeah, yeah. But
Oh,
okay,
that's a okay.
so also during this point, so before he's built this place where he's going to build his murder house.
Yeah.
He's also getting into trouble financially. At one point, he was forced to sell both of the houses that he owned, the one his wife was living in and the one he was in Chicago. And some psychologists think this might be the stressor that pushed him. Now, my argument is, well, he was kind of already creepy and involved in this stuff. He wasn't really murdering people himself at this point. He was just taking advantage of, the bodies and of other people who had already died. And he was certainly doing insurance fraud, and he was certainly a bigamist. But at this point, he hadn't actually murdered anybody himself. Not that we can tell. So someone actually suggested that he went into absolute bankruptcy. He was forced to sell the houses, and this might have been a huge stressor for him. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that his reasons for killing really went through 3 stages that we were going to get into, where you had the sort of, I guess, expediency, you could call it, for the insurance side of it when he was perpetrating those frauds. Then you
Yeah.
had the later business deals, and then you had him descending more or less into straight up sex murder toward the
Well,
end of it.
but what about the two boys, right? That he
Yeah, that's another one of those
they
things that
don't fit into those three.
it could be apocryphal. It could be, they never found bodies. They never proved anything. It's another one of those things. There were rumors. So but yeah, if you're going to count them
Well,
in as
fleeing the city is, kind of makes you
yeah,
look guilty
yeah. Okay,
twice.
well, okay, so the boy at the drugstore, maybe he did mess up the medication and the boy died. So maybe that one wasn't on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then the other one in New York, yeah, I'm not sure about that one. We don't know who the boy was. We don't know if he left town or not. We just don't
Well,
know.
either way, there you have a sort of evolution of his MO and his reason for killing
Yeah,
across time.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
I
and
mean,
actually,
even
also around the same time. So after this, after he got into this like dire financial strait, he actually got back in touch with his classmate Laycock, and he said, "Hey, we have to do another family death insurance fraud because I really need money." So he's going to use himself, pretend to kill himself as the father. He insured his wife, and then they were going to find a woman, and then they waited 2 weeks for a suitable boy, like for a woman body and a boy body, and it didn't come in, and they figured out it was too risky, so they kind of just abandoned the whole thing. But he was actively going after this family death situation, which he kind of returns to. Um, okay, so after that, he's bought this plot of land, and he starts construction on his hotel, which he called his castle. Now I've got a description of the castle just to give just to give a little flavor. So
there's several
um,
floor plans in the
Yeah.
graphics too.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
got
and
one
there's
up now, and the I really love this full color image. Um,
I
this,
noticed, yeah, you put up an image by Harley Carden. She did like a 3D model of what
yeah.
the house would look like based on the one. It's you can get it as a puzzle. I so want this.
Oh my God.
I know it's awesome. Okay,
So,
so
yeah,
base
tell us
okay,
about this house. It's
so basically
crazy.
he had over 500 workers working on the house, and he was constantly firing them and rehiring them. Each working crew did different bits of the house, so no two crews knew exactly what was going on. Um, so there were a pharmacy on the first floor, and the first floor also had 4 retail stores, and on the third floor there were 36 guest rooms. Now we don't know whether the third floor was actually actively used. He built it at a later stage for when the World Fair was going to open, and the idea was to attract people into the hotel from the World Fair.
Hey, he figures
Um,
he's going to need more room anyway. There's
yeah,
thousands of people at that, which
yeah,
it might be
exactly.
worth describing a bit. It's the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, and it literally attracted thousands upon thousands of people, not into the millions, maybe. Um, I should have gotten that full number in front of me, but the city built a lot of grand structures for this to show off their opulence, to show off the industrial progress of different
Hmm.
countries. That's the whole purpose of it. But
Right.
I think this was actually the World Fair where Tesla won out the contract to do the lighting, and
Oh, yes.
he
I think you're
that's
demonstrated
right.
his
true.
new lighting technique. So a lot of people were there to see that as well. Plus, he did demonstrations around. So yeah, it was huge. It was a huge deal.
Was that the first fair that had electrical lighting?
Mm, good chance of that.
I
Because
think.
1893, it
I
might have
mean,
been.
they don't do
I
those like every year. So,
No.
no, I don't. I think it might have been, or at least it was probably the first one in Chicago. And I know that Tesla was up against I think Westinghouse and Edison.
Edison.
And Tesla kind of got the contract and basically put himself bankrupt lighting the whole thing, but then it got the attention of Westinghouse and they started working together. So
But
anyway, that's beside.
yeah, there was a book that was written about this that we might be referring to in the course of this podcast, but it's called The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson.
Yeah,
It's all about murder, magic, and madness at the fair that changed America. And they called it the White City because of a lot of the structures that were built around there, a lot of this opulent architecture built just for the fair.
yep, yeah, it was massive. There were huge permanent buildings built, just like an entire city was built within Chicago just for this thing.
Yeah,
Oh, and that
uh,
book, by the way, is being made into a movie. Apparently,
it is.
Leonardo DiCaprio is playing HH Holmes.
Yep, with Martin Scorsese helming it.
Yeah,
So,
I believe it's coming out next year, so we look forward to that.
yeah, that'd be good, I think.
Okay,
Definitely.
so back to the hotel. So uh, okay, so they've got about 36 rooms on the third floor that are just guest rooms. The second floor, however, 35 rooms on the second floor, furnished with an assortment of odd features, varying from peepholes and asbestos padded walls degas pipes, sliding walls, vents, all controlled from Mudgett's personal apartment. Many of the rooms were also windowless and soundproof. Other peculiarities of this level included secret staircases, false walls and ceilings, and doors locking from the outside. Long grease chutes led from the second floor rooms to the two-level basement, which housed a dissection table, surgical instruments, a large vat of acid, mounds of quicklime, an incinerator, and two vast lime-lined vaults buried in the ground and sealed with heavy metal doors. So that gives you a
This
little bit of
guy
a
thinks of
flavor.
everything.
I know, seriously, right?
Oh my God.
And everything has a purpose, because when we get more into it with the stuff that he's doing, it's just kind of amazing, really. Um, so basically, he's now got this giant.
Okay. So let's take a moment to appreciate. So this is a guy who started off doing accounting and then went to medical school. Now he has architected an entire three-story murder hotel with almost 100 rooms
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
I've got
yeah.
and and,
I've got
sec- and secret everything, including piped in gas.
yeah, I've got a few stories to tie in
So
a few of the little things that he's got.
so I mean this guy has an astonishing mind. I mean
150,000 people at that fair.
that's pretty
That is
good
how
for
he was able to get the numbers that he ultimately got. Was that
Well,
amount of people at the fair?
there is another connection to that, which I'll kind of get into. I'm kind of going like timeline wise, because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and better. Um, so once he's got the hotel set up, the first thing he does is he does another insurance fraud, and this time it's on his old mate Leacock. Um, but instead of involving Leacock in the insurance fraud, he actually kills Leacock after taking out a policy on him, and manages to make $20,000, which in our money is 595,500.
So a good
He dumped
chunk.
the So he put the body on ice in his hotel, and then he dumped the body with his own clothing on for the insurance people to find. And then with that money, he opened up his own drugstore and a barber shop on the first floor. And at that point, he wasn't Mudgett anymore. He changed his name officially to HH Holmes, because he had so many insurance fraud enemies at this point. He didn't want anybody to find him, so he just changed his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though these companies don't really talk to each other back then, that's got to be something with diminishing returns, if you will, that it can
Yes,
only
it
last so long.
Yeah, and we're up to about 1890 now, which is we're about 8 years away from the Jack the Ripper killings in London, and I think we're also 2 years away from the missing persons bureau being set up. So there's still no coordinated missing persons or anything like that. So in 1890, he kind of does what they refer to as the business murders. So he starts actively murdering people for money, specifically for money. So what he would do is he would get checks from furniture makers, get them to write checks over to him. Like we're talking tens of thousands, tens and tens, like 10,000 here, 10,000 here. And then he would, apparently the quote is, induce them to go into the furnace.
What?
So he gets all these furniture makers to write checks over to him, and then he somehow induces them to go into the furnace. He probably just shoves them. I don't know. It's his words, inducing them.
Oh, your cash, it's in the back of the furnace.
Yeah, I tell you.
Just go get
And
it.
Now, wait, was this the part of when he would get people into the vault that he had filled with gas?
no,
No.
this was before he did that. That's coming up.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, he then started industrializing his body trade. He realized when he was in medical school, obviously, that a lot of money could be made. And he realized that all of these bodies had to come from someplace for these schools. So basically, you could get $20 to $30 for a body, not for dissection purposes, which is about $750. And then he hired someone who used to do the work at his own university to come and work for him, and he was a specialist in making articulated skeletons. So at that point, what he did is he installed carbolic acid and bleach in the basement so that if you soak the bodies in that, they come out really nice and white and flesh free. And you could get $170 for a mounted skeleton. That's $5,000.
Wow.
Well, and another big part of that is you're not going to get any money if it's basically, easy to see that they were murdered. Let's say,
Well, yeah,
you see a
exactly.
cracked skull or bludgeoning or what have you.
Well, he claimed he accidentally hit someone with a chair, an old doctor friend of his, and the head was too crushed in, so he couldn't use that one for a skeleton because it was obvious something had happened.
So go to
Wow.
gas to do it.
Oh no, he killed him with the chair. He just
No, I'm talking about on others.
Oh, and others, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, avoid
Yeah.
it from then on.
But one of the things he did with the gas, so yeah, the gas was a perfect way to kill bodies and a perfect way to get perfectly preserved bodies, either, and if you want to change them into skeletons, absolutely perfect, bang on, brilliant.
Right.
But what he also did was that he started getting in really wealthy investors. And he would bring them up to his office. And part of his office, he had this little door. And he would talk to them and talk to them, and he would get them to invest money. And if they didn't want to sign over checks to him, he would put them in this little door, close the door, and it was essentially a gas chamber. He had a little window in there. He would start gassing them until they said yes. He would bring them out, and they would sign over the check. So he made about $2 million this way.
What?
Yeah. So he either gassed them, or some of them might have lived, but he gassed them until they signed checks over to him just to live, and then I think he probably killed them after that.
Well, yeah.
$2 million in 1890 money?
No. He made about $70,000.
Oh, okay.
In
2 million in
today's,
today's.
yeah,
Okay.
in today's money, it's about 2.1 million. I like I said, I used an online inflation thingy. So yeah, he's doing that. He's also using a hell of a lot of chloroform. Apparently, he got it from his own pharmacy downstairs, and he was getting it 9 to 10 times a week.
Nobody noticed
Um,
that?
Well, that's apparently the pharmacy boy. I don't remember his name. He said yes, he was rather using a lot, and that was the only quote we got from him.
Wow.
But no,
I need it to help me sleep.
like I don't know. I'm
gonna chloroform myself.
Yeah, the blueprint that you had up on the screen. Apparently, there were separate tradesmen building different. Basically, it's what I like to call a sausage machine. It was like you kill people, you strip the bodies down, you bleach them, you get them out the door. It's just so basically, because the first floor was essentially retail, and you had to get the bodies down to the basement. What would happen is, for example, there was like one of the bathrooms on the second floor had a secret trap door that was a chute. So basically, you just drag the body to that bathroom, dump the body down the chute. There was also a secret stairway in that basement. So in that bathroom. So you go down the secret stairway, get the body, and then drag it over to the dissection room. And no one has to see anything on the outside or on the retail section. So everything looks completely normal.
Wow. Yeah, you can see it in the 3D drawing here. It's great.
Yeah, I love this. I really have to get a poster of this. So let's see.
One of the schematics mentions that one of the rooms is called a dark room. Now, was that for photography or
Nope. I can't say it was.
No, I don't think so.
no? I didn't think so, but what do they mean by dark room?
That's a good question.
He started getting pretty sadistic, so I'm wondering if, like, you'll see in a little while how sadistic he's starting to get.
So like
Like
a
when he gets
sensory deprivation room.
maybe something like that, and then he has something noises in there in the dark, and it would drive people quite. I don't know. It would terrify me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. So yeah, some of the rooms also are just killing rooms. They just have gas piped in and they just die. So that nice clean ways of getting your bodies. He does actually start Okay, sorry, hang on. Let's keep going. So he's still at this point defrauding the life insurance. So he's defrauding life insurance. He's making money from the first floor retail, and he's also got the medical school business. So basically, he's making a lot of money. So
Yeah.
the following year, everything's going well. They kind of start the period that they kind of refer to as the sex murders. So he's a very, very handsome man. Women are very taken with him. He starts advertising for not only for his hotel for the World Fair, but for women to come and work for him. He's very, very keen on hiring women. He actually set up a women's employment agency, which would give him a huge pool of victims. But he gave women jobs as stenographers, as people in his retail shops, stuff like that. And then in the same year, things start getting really sort of very bizarre. So one of the women he gave a job
It's okay.
start getting
Now
yeah
it's
start
starting to get
yeah.
bizarre.
It's just I'm looking through my notes and it gets hugely, hugely complicated at this point because the guy is he's got his fingers in so many pies. So one of the women he gives a job to, her sister moves in. Her name's Julia Smythe, and she moves in with her 8-year-old daughter, Pearl, and her husband, Ned Connor. Now he gives the man a job as a watchmaker in a shop. And within a few months, the sister has been poisoned because apparently she denied his advances. Now, Julia, not realizing that Holmes has killed her sister, starts an affair with Holmes because he's just that damn sexy. Um, that pretty much ended the marriage between Ned and Julia, and Ned got the hell out of there. So that's the end of sort of him. And then at Christmas Eve that year, Julia, surprise, surprise, goes missing. Um, Holmes claimed that she had died during an abortion. There was never any investigation, and actually afterwards, when it all came to light, they actually found the body without the head of the daughter buried in the lime pit in the castle's basement.
Wow.
So
This
yeah.
source says that the dark room on the second floor was used to store excess bodies
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I
when they were
actually
coming in. This
yeah.
is under Google Books. It's Adam Selzer, if I can read that. Yeah, Seltzer. HH Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil.
Okay, that's interesting.
This part of it says papers heard enough to believe that Chappelle met Holmes in the summer of 1892. He knew him as Harry Gordon. That's another thing. He had quite a few aliases.
Oh, yeah.
And had
Well,
answered Holmes's ad looking for a machinist. Holmes, he said, had taken him to a dark room on the second floor of the castle and shown him the rotting corpse of a man. It was
Uh,
mostly a skeleton from the waist up, but with lots of flesh left on the lower limbs. Chappelle said he had taken the arm bones and skull home, and Holmes had brought him the rest. This, he said, was October 1, 1892. The following January 2nd, he'd been taken to the room again and shown a female body that was far less skeletonized. Quote, the body looked like that of a jackrabbit which had been skinned by splitting the skin down the face and rolling it back off the entire body, he told Fitzpatrick, apparently in a place where Tribune reporters could hear. In some places, considerable of the flesh had been taken off with it.
wow.
And in June of 1893, he said he picked up a third body.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. Well, it's interesting and yeah.
whoa.
Okay, so now we know what the dark room was for.
That's not easy to. I mean, yeah, you can hide a body from sight, but there's more tells. I mean, the stink. How do you hide the stink? Right?
If he's
Well,
pumping in gases to other parts of it, he might be able to use that knowledge to help
yeah,
minimize that sort of thing.
and plus
Ventilate.
he's got all of the all of the walls and stuff at least asbestos lined and lined with all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think
Yeah.
at one point in order, so he was delivering like body parts and stuff as part of his business when he first started, and he had actually a special box lined with tar so that no blood seeps through when you're moving the bodies between schools. So he obviously knew what he
Yep.
was doing with that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
like
I don't
but
know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah,
No, that
like
makes
we
sense.
had been kind of stressing from the beginning, this guy is very rational, very calculating.
He is, yeah, and it gets even better.
In fact, I would
Wow,
think he would be
what?
very much at home in a place and time like Nazi Germany, the way he
Yeah,
killed people.
yeah, I think
Oh
he
yeah.
probably, yeah. Except he wouldn't have got the money. He seems to have really craved this money, and it's still, and he's still, right up until before he dies, he's still working on ways to get money. But we'll get into that. We're a few years away from that yet. So,
Mhm.
so we're basically up to 1892, 1893. He comes into contact while he's working with a family called the Pietzels, Ben Pietzel. Ben Pietzel has a little bit of a shady background, but he's putting himself out as an inventor. He's invented this coal bin, and Holmes hires him to sort of do his dirty work, do running around and running errands, and so he was kind of his go-to boy. In the meantime, he kills a couple more women because they won't marry him. There's a woman called Emily Segrand. He gives her a job as a typist and then ends up killing her because she won't marry him. There's a couple of other women. Yeah.
Oh,
So
he's not really good on with rejection.
he really just is not. And he's quite the stalker, apparently. So we'll find out next with them. So during the World's Fair, a Texas heiress called Minnie Williams comes to town, and she gets hired as a stenographer by Holmes. Now, by heiress, she's got $50,000 worth of Fort Worth, Texas property, which is 1.5 million in our money today, and he manages to woo the heck out of her. Like he just chases her relentlessly and eventually gets her to sign over all of the property to him. So this is where it gets where his names comes into it. So basically, what happens is he persuaded Williams to transfer the deed to her property in Fort Worth to a man named Alexander Bond, which is one of his aliases.
Aliases.
In
Hmm.
April 1893, Williams transferred the deed, with Holmes actually serving as the notary. So he actually signed as the notary to the property over to one of his aliases, and
Oh,
then he
that's God.
yeah, and then he actually later signed the property over to his mate Pietzel, who was using the alias Benton T. Lyman. Um,
Lyman. Oh man.
yeah, I know. I think that's funny,
Yeah, a
isn't it?
degree of sarcasm in these criminals.
I know. I'm looking at all the names he's using and trying to see if there's anything in there that I can detect, that people have missed or something. Um, so basically, they're getting along well. They're acting like husband and wife. There is a sister, though. Now, her sister also has a claim to the land. So the sister comes to visit in July,
Is
and
it
he picks her
in
up.
Texas or in Chicago?
She's in,
Texas.
in Texas, yeah. So
Okay.
the property that Minnie's just signed over to Holmes, the Minnie's sister has a claim to it.
Okay.
Um, so they invite her to come to Chicago, and Holmes picks her up at the station, takes her to the castle, and immediately gasses her. Um, but
I
this
mean,
time,
why waste time?
but this time he adds extra chemicals to the gas to make her suffer. So she doesn't die as quickly as she could, and
Oh my God.
she's burning and her flesh is, yeah, he really, really goes after her. He then goes on a train trip with Minnie, and she writes home and says, "Oh, we're going on a train trip to Europe, through Europe," and she's never seen again. We think she's poisoned.
Yeah.
So he ends up with one and a half, well, $50,000 worth of Fort Worth prime property, and now he doesn't have a girlfriend anymore. The funny thing about this one is actually after he was arrested and they were interviewing him, he actually regretted this one. He said he loved her. So that's, I don't know. He lies. He's a perpetual liar. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems kind of like a weird thing.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
the
Why
thing,
would you say that if you didn't have to?
well, because pathological liars have to lie whether it makes any sense to or not.
Oh, so he probably had no control over it or something.
Yeah. I've
Okay.
I've, I've actually known an actual pathological liar. It's kind of fascinating because they'll lie about the stupidest shit that makes no difference at all.
Oh, wow. Very weird. Okay, well,
Yeah.
anyway, it was weird that particularly this one, he said that he loved, but he got a lot out of her, but yeah, he ended up killing her. So sometime in 1894, apparently, the police visit the hotel regarding their investigation for the fraud. Because remember, he still got outstanding warrants everywhere. He still defrauded, half of the half of the southern half of the United States. So they actually come into the hotel and they see a bunch of packages ready for shipment. And these are all the packages, like body parts that he's sending out to medical schools. And he lies to them and says, "Oh, it's just, I don't know, laundry ready to be sent out." And they trust him. They leave, and he immediately sets fire to the castle's top floor because he panics. He absolutely panics because they're closing in for the insurance stuff, and he's got all
Yeah.
these bodies in place. So he sets fire. He sets fire to the place, and then flees with his friend Pietzel to his lovely property in Fort Worth.
That was
Um,
not the fire that ultimately burned the place down, though. Was
no,
it?
no,
Yeah, I
no,
didn't think so. That was
no.
separate.
Yeah, that's a separate one. Yeah. So he goes to Fort Worth. He does try to start another castle type place, but nothing really came of it. Um, then he ends up in July of that year. He ends up in prison. This is when he's selling things that don't belong to him. Um, and he ends up meeting a prisoner in there called Marion Hedgepeth. And Hedgepeth is really extremely dodgy. And he's going like, "Okay, I have an insurance thing I want to do. Do you know any good lawyers?" So Hedgepeth says, "Yeah, my lawyer, Jephthah Howe." So Howe is now this lawyer. He agrees to help. He thinks this new scheme is brilliant. This new scheme is I'm going to kill myself, fake my own death, and get the insurance company to pay. And Howe thinks, "Yeah, I'm in on this." The insurance company, however, aren't going for it this time. Like, they're absolutely no, no. And the whole thing is dropped. So then a few months later, they decide they're going to kill Pietzel. So they go to New York. Pietzel sets himself up as a patent office. Oh, sorry, in Philadelphia, sorry. They wait a few months, and then there's supposed to be an accident. And the wife is in on this, and the body is supposed to be substituted for something else. And the wife is supposed to get $10,000, supposed to split it between her, Holmes, and this lawyer, Howe. Now, what happens, and we don't know why, is in September that year, he actually ended up killing Ben Pietzel. So instead of faking his death, he actually did kill him. No idea why. But he was bound. He was burnt alive. He put benzene on his clothes and let him on fire. It was an extremely unpleasant death.
Hmm.
So So now that he's actually got the actual body of Ben Pietzel, the insurance company pays out $10,000, which Holmes keeps, but then lies to the wife, Carrie, and says that, "Oh, your husband has gone into hiding in London. Um, I will take your children to him." And he manages to persuade Carrie to give him three of the children. God knows why. Just like, so one of them is 8-year-old Howard. He's the boy. He goes missing in Indianapolis. They later find him. He was burned, cut up, and stuffed up the chimney in one of the rental properties. He then takes Alice and Nellie, the two other girls. He takes them to Canada, to Toronto, actually. And then in October, he actually ends up gassing them. So he actually took one of his own trunks, adapted it into a portable gas chamber, cut a hole in it, and he gassed them. There is, I read a few police reports from Toronto at the time, and there's some suggestion that he might have raped them, but it's not really his MO with the
Right.
children.
Right.
He tends to just get rid of the children because they're in the way, but so I don't know whether I believe that or not. The children are actually buried in Toronto.
It's not really his game, is it?
No, no, it's not. No.
Yeah.
Um, and the children are actually buried in Toronto. It's funny. I've actually walked by the exact place where that house was so many times. It's kind of weird. It's now
Wow.
a coffee shop. Um, the other weird thing is the girls actually wrote letters home from every place they visited because he was sort of dragging them around a little bit. And those letters, when they found them, ultimately were able to help police trace where he went and how he got there because he kept them. He didn't destroy the letters for some reason.
Ah.
So by this point, the insurance company are extremely suspicious of all the insurance stuff going on. So they hire Pinkerton's National Detective Agency.
Oh,
Pinkerton,
he's in trouble now.
yeah, these guys are good actually.
Yep.
So they find him. They find him in Boston, and he's actually arrested on a horse theft warrant. So it's like another one of those Al Capone things. All the evil he's done, and they get him on tax fraud. Like all the evil this guy's done, and they've got him on horse theft that he did while he
Horse?
was in Fort Worth. A horse. He stole a horse in Fort Worth, and that's what they arrested him on.
Wow.
He while he's in prison, he becomes this like massive celebrity for because of his insurance scams. He writes a book while he's in prison. Um, it's just very bizarre stuff going on all about being but we still don't know.
Memoir, wasn't it?
Sorry.
Memoir, wasn't it?
Yeah, well he wrote
Mm.
another one that has another really bizarre title, yeah, but anyway, yeah, he wrote his memoirs while he was in there. But we still don't know about all of the murders. This is strictly because the insurance company is suspicious and because of horse theft. So in the meantime, a Chicago detective called Frank Geyer starts investigating, and he traces um, this guy Holmes's path to Toronto. Eventually, finds the girls. This is actually one of the first time they use the press to help solve a murder. So they had a press conference, and the neighbor of the house that Holmes had rented comes forward and says, "Oh, I recognize the guy." And then they realize he's rented this place, and they eventually find the girls' bodies buried in the kitchen cellar.
Mm.
So the day after that happens, um, the detectives broke into the hotel in Chicago. They realized what was going on. They did a thorough investigation of the entire place. So he's in prison now. They've realized all of this stuff is done. That's when the other fire happens in August of that year.
Can you
So
can you imagine though? Can you imagine go being one of the first police officers to go into the castle and you're like, holy fuck, right? I mean,
we'll
it
see.
just keeps
That's
going on and on and on, and it's all built around murder.
Well, see, one of the other things that okay, so we know for sure that they found things like the chutes and the gassing in and the
The
dissection
bats
room.
and the lime and all that shit.
But there's another thing that came out. Like, one of these Pulp Fiction things came out in the 20th century that the police also found torture devices and all kinds of medieval horrific things, and that apparently wasn't true. That's just written to
Right.
make them more interesting, as if the gas chambers
Yeah,
and the
it's
lime
not
dust wasn't
enough.
enough. Yeah,
The
That
body.
link in the chat is the Library of Congress. It has more than a few newspapers about Holmes from that time.
that's very
So,
cool.
right
Yeah,
under where it says sample articles from Chronicling America. I
that's very
imagine you
cool.
could find more if you searched in their database for that.
I
They
was
give
looking
some
at
tips for it.
it was a big deal in Canada as well. I guess not much happens here. So when one of your serial killers comes up here, it's all over the news. Okay, so we're up to August. So August is when the fire happened. The following month, they officially charged him with the murder of um, Ben, poor Ben. And then now it's capital murder, and he's given the death penalty. The trial only lasts about 5 days. He actually confessed to 27 murders, but a lot of the people that he confessed to murdering to were actually still alive when he said they were dead. So his confession is unreliable. There's an estimate of up to 200 people that he possibly killed. The police at the time are estimating, like contemporary police say, 100 based on what they saw in the hotel. But I don't know. He had that place pretty industrialized. It's going to be very, very difficult to
Yeah. I mean,
And
difficult to
where
prove.
have we seen that false confession before, SK? Henry
oh,
Lee Lucas, for one.
right. Yeah.
He had upwards of 600 with him with the false confessions.
Oh, and you
Interestingly,
remember?
Bundy was kind of the other direction. He was reluctant to take credit
Yeah,
for too much.
I don't know why this guy chose 27. It's kind of an odd number.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
and people that were still alive.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, you got to understand, the audience, obviously you do, that an accurate number would be pretty impossible to settle on because there's no bodies, there's no bones, there's no remains for
Yeah.
most of them. You know, he had, yeah, he had an industrial operation to get rid of those bodies to the medical schools, either through bodies sales, cadaver sales or skeletal sales.
Oh, well,
And there's very little records, right?
just an add on to that, when they actually did start investigating, remember poor Julia who had the affair with him, even though he murdered her sister?
Yeah.
They found Julia's skeleton hanging in a medical school.
Whoa. How did they identify her?
Dental.
Ah,
They were able to do dental apparently at that point. I don't know how. It's obviously not through X-rays. Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
no.
But
But
how
when
they
was
identified.
when was it when they found that? Was that right around this time, or was it like a decade or so after?
No, it was right around the same time. It was 1895, so it was
Hmm.
shortly after, because they just went and they tried to track down as many people as possible. And as soon as they realized that he had this business with medical schools, they were all over the
Hmm.
medical schools. So I didn't read what happened. There must have been a scandal with the medical schools as well, but I didn't read anything about that.
Well,
Well,
basically a more modern Burke's Bodies going on.
Yeah.
well, medical schools have been notorious for looking the other way as far as the sources of bodies for
Hmm.
cadavers for the students.
Yeah.
Um, so there would have been very few actual, records on those.
Hmm.
It was a cash
As
business and no questions asked kind of
as he
arrangement.
learned, yeah, as he learned very early on when he was a medical student, so he knew
Exactly.
exactly what was going on, took advantage of it. Also, strangely enough, he blamed the woman he claimed to love, Minnie Williams, for the death of the two girls.
How so?
Huh.
He said she did it and then stormed off.
Oh, he actually accused her.
He
Not
said she killed. Yeah, he said that she killed the two girls. She had come with him, and she killed the two girls and then took off. I don't know what he lied about everything. So.
yeah.
Um, so basically, he's now in prison. Um, he's waiting to die. He's got the death penalty. He's going to be hanged. He's going to be hanged in May, but the month before that, in April, he grants an interview to Hearst newspapers for $7,500, which is $226,000 in our money.
That's
A final
outrageous.
interview that while he's in prison, the month before he hangs on the 7th of May. And by the way, his neck didn't snap. He actually strangled, so it took him about 15 minutes to die.
Wow.
Deserved it.
Good.
Yeah.
Think that's unequivocal.
And
But
apparently,
yeah, go on.
apparently, and apparently, he was calm. He was collected. He didn't have show any remorse. Nothing. His only wish was that he be buried under concrete, so that the body could never be dug up and dissected.
Huh. He's
Yeah.
paranoid about it. It's
Oh yeah, he was
interesting.
extremely paranoid about it. In fact, I had something written down. Oh yeah, I've got something here. Apparently, let's see. It was covered in seven 3,000-pound barrels of cement.
Shoo.
Yeah.
Damn.
And the quote was to ensure his body against the vandalism or scientific curiosity of ghouls.
Do you
You
mean
know,
he
that's
like?
probably not completely ill-founded if you look at serial killer groupies today. The
Yeah.
Well,
obsession some have with collecting.
that's true, and there has been an ongoing medical curiosity. Um, you know,
Hmm.
a lot of neurosurgeons have wanted to see if they could spot evil in the brain.
Right.
But of course, you can't. But
Yeah.
but that was but they didn't know that until they went and looked, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, it's not really any different than phrenology was.
Yeah, a lot different, I think, but similar ideas. Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
you don't
In
have to be
terms of
dead.
validity, that is.
You don't have to be dead to have someone read your head, though.
from the inside.
Yeah. Okay, well okay, if we're talking about the inside part, then yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the outside.
Yeah, one's inside, one's outside. Yeah, phrenology's
Okay.
funny.
But yeah, basically, yeah. So that picture you keep showing is the artist name is Holly Carden. I hope you don't mind me mentioning her name, but she deserves credit for that because it's amazing.
The,
And it's rather funny. Mudgett's great great grandson, I think it was, has been perpetrating the idea that he was Jack the Ripper.
Oh God,
oh yeah.
Well, in the friggin' History Channel, and there's standards for scholarship. I mean, bleh, come on.
Yeah, I
Had
watched a
it.
documentary today about that, and I was like, no, just no. I nearly turned it off.
Yeah, they had a show on it about 2 years ago, where it was
Yeah.
him and somebody from the CIA. I think she was, but when that was on, I watched a little bit of it and I actually got into a Twitter argument with her over it.
That's
and how they're totally full of shit. I should have dug the thread up.
funny.
Well, and somebody has found very tenuous through multiple layers of marriages connection between Holmes and Meghan Markle.
Oh, I heard that.
No way,
Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
I
Huh.
heard that. Yeah.
it's a very very indirect path, but nonetheless.
That's
I mean,
weird.
it's
Yeah.
not, it's like you could do that with anybody.
I mean, they
So,
were trying to make that argument with motive, that they had the same motive too, but I can't think of two more different serial
Yeah.
killers than
I
H.H.
think
Holmes and Jack the Ripper.
the documentary I was looking at. So first of all, they said that Jack the Ripper was sort of like he had hundreds of murders attributed to him, and I'm like, no, I'm
No.
sorry. And then
No.
I don't mean to offend anybody, and I know there are people that have their opinions, but I'm part of the canonical five group. I believe the five women, and that was the same guy, and the other people, they were just too different. They just didn't fit in. They might have been in the same area, but it was a rough area.
hmm
Yeah, Holmes is just not. He's not the same
Nothing
MO.
like it.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
He's
no.
too organized.
Well,
Yeah.
and they were trying to. I remember part of the Twitter thread between me and her was her saying that Jack the Ripper was killing for money. Like, no.
No, he
No,
wasn't.
no, 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 no.
Money? What money?
That's the argument they were trying to make.
How?
Like, no.
Well,
I'm trying to remember how she was making that argument. Oh, I think they were trying to make that argument because he took the womb out of Annie Chapman.
I've
was-
never heard that argument. Yeah, but he took
was
various
selling
bits
selling
from each
organs
one.
for what?
Well, but he took the womb to sell organs is what they were trying to say. And but
They
the problem
weren't-
with that is
they weren't
there's
doing
so many organs in that
transplants.
cavity.
Yeah.
There's so many other organs that would have been that much easier to get out and sell than a womb.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
No.
come on.
the
No, I
market
believe it.
couldn't have been that big for, human organs because they weren't
No.
they weren't doing transplants for fuck's sakes.
No,
Well,
exactly.
they wanted whole bodies, which is how Holmes made money. They wanted whole bodies for students to dissect.
Yes.
Yeah, but remember, you're talking about a network that airs shows about ancient aliens, for fuck's sake. Come on.
Yes, we
South
are.
Park
Yes,
did
okay.
South Park did a great episode on the History Channel. Was all about them fucking up the truth and scholarship.
Oh God. Okay. Well,
Well,
we've got
see,
Holmes to be-
if Holmes had been in London, he would have had rooms. He would have brought the women inside. He didn't use knives. He didn't use edged weapons.
No.
Well, that's one of the arguments that like Holmes is. So Jack the Ripper was a stalker. He went outside. He stalked these women outside in the streets. Holmes
Yes.
is very
Mhm.
come inside with me, sweetie. Like
Yeah.
he was face to face. He talked to them. He would impress them. He would invite them in, and then he would do the job inside. So that's just two completely different MOs.
Well, and it's that's a great point. And then also, when you get into it, Jack the Ripper is very much the quintessential disorganized killer
Yeah.
in how he
Yeah.
does things.
Opportunistic.
Whereas Holmes couldn't be the more opposite, being
Yeah.
just ruthlessly analytical about it.
Well, Holmes set himself up so that he could do any of the killing anytime he wanted with no one knowing. He could do it at his leisure, which
Yep.
Jack the Ripper, he had to keep track of police beats. They did the same beat every 10 minutes, so he only had a limited time window, and it was frenzied and rushed. And no, it's just
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, exactly. He's a frenzied killer. Holmes is not. Holmes is anything but a
Especially
frenzied
after
killer.
especially after the first couple of killings, they invited police people in from other precincts. So there were just hundreds of police swarming that area. He would have had to have got in, frenzied. No, Holmes is just not. That's just different.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And there's no evidence that he flew to London. There's no wait, no, he would have taken a boat. There's no evidence that he traveled to London. There's no evidence of his even being there. Nothing.
Yep.
And he killed for two reasons. Speaking of Holmes, he killed for money and he
Yeah.
killed for sex. He wasn't. He doesn't ever have seemed to have been angry. He wasn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ripper was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
angry.
Oh yeah, definitely raging. What
Yeah.
JTR did.
I don't know. Holmes got a little bit angry when women didn't return his affection. He killed them a lot for that reason.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
but he didn't kill
still,
him the same way either.
no, absolutely no. He was very clean killing, wasn't he? Very hands off.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ruthless, meticulous, systematic.
Yeah. So let's see. He's still coming up in the news. So we've got the movie coming out. There's numerous documentaries. The family, I guess there were rumors that, and this is one of the things that the Jack the Ripper thing reminded me of. One of the rumors involving Holmes is that he managed to convince a guard to replace the body, and he didn't actually die. He wasn't actually hanged. He managed to escape. So some people think, oh, he escaped to London. Because if he actually died in 1896 and the Ripper murders were after that, then how could he have done them? So the family actually had, because of all this nonsense going on, and I guess it must have been really huge. I didn't realize the family members had his body exhumed. They had to dig through those
concrete.
all that concrete. They finally got through because of the concrete. His body was remarkably well preserved. I guess I don't know why. He had a full mustache. His clothing was not decayed at all, and they absolutely confirmed he is in the grave. Like that is him. So
Okay.
he absolutely did die that day, and he was buried.
Well, and they have that happen more than people think too, with that sort of preservation of bodies.
The really weird thing that I read when I was reading that article about the family is if it had been proven that it was someone else, they would have had to have paid for the exhumation.
Oh, wow.
What?
But because it was him, they didn't have to pay for it. How weird is that?
That's bizarre.
I know.
Like it was their fault.
I know. That's what I was
Dang.
thinking. You spin the wheel, you take your chances. I don't know. Who's buried in this grave?
Wow,
I know. It's just so weird.
Chicago, man, they're just weird.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think we failed to mention with that fire that took the building down. The basement is still there.
Oh yeah, they actually built over it. It became a post office.
Yep.
And I think is it still? I think it was up till about the 1930s, and then they built a post office over it. And yeah, apparently you could still go down there if you want. Well, I don't think they let tourists in, but.
Oh, I think they do nowadays. I think it's on the Haunted Chicago tour.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
I'd have to check to be sure, but there was one video I was looking at on YouTube that was a podcast that was done from the basement.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I've only ever seen pictures from the outside.
Yep.
Huh. No, I tracked his where he stayed and stuff in Toronto, and I've actually been to all the places that he stayed.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. There's a hotel in downtown Toronto called the Royal York, and in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was sort of like a bunch of sort of like boarding houses on that same corner, and he stayed in one of those with the kids. And then he moved to this other house that's further northern Toronto, and like I said, I've walked by that place so many times. And then like the two girls are actually buried in a cemetery in Toronto.
Yep. Chicago is, well, sort of my backyard where I am, but has its share of serial killers, definitely.
Well, big cities kind of attract them, don't they?
Well, but then you have a lot of them that came out of Wisconsin, too, right by there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
in Indiana.
Well, that's one that we need to do, speaking of which. Baumeister. Herb Baumeister, Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the story of Mr. Holmes, Mr. Munster, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Mudgett?
Munster.
I still can't believe I did that. God.
Mudgett. Mudgett. I wonder how much he was made fun of in school for that name.
Well, there is a suggestion that even if he wasn't treated that poorly, I mean, he probably did have a pretty strict upbringing, given his the religious, like his parents. His mom was like a sort of stay-at-home mom. He had two older siblings and two younger siblings. They were all very, very strict with the religion. His father was a farmer, so apparently he was a very tough man as well. But there's no suggestion of any abuse. But even if you don't sort of like, even if you go with that, there is suggestion that he was bullied at school because he was quite intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that there's nothing that says he was horrifically bullied, but I don't know, maybe if he didn't have anybody to talk to at home about it and he was being bullied and he was particularly sensitive, I don't know.
Children.
I wonder how much of
Children
that
are
would
terrible.
have.
Children are just.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. Well, I wonder how much of that isn't sort of superimposed on from what we know about serial killers today, where we kind of gather the info and then say, oh, this must have happened to him too.
Right.
Which, of course, doesn't prove anything. Just at best an educated guess.
But don't you think it's unusual with this guy that his motive mainly seems to be money, and for some reason he's so psychologically afraid of being not with money that something happened in his lifetime. That one incident I talked about, but he was doing the insurance fraud before then, so he seemed to be almost psychotically terrified of not having enough money to live, even from an early age. And the other thing is the sort of like the backwardness. Like I said before, most people start with kind of small animals, and we don't know whether he did that or not. So let's say he didn't, because there's no contemporary evidence. And then they start by stalking people. He kind of went right in with killing and then started stalking the women. So he kind of was backwards with that. Have you heard of that happening before?
No, that's an anomaly as far as I know.
That's really unusual. It's really, it's really unusual that he doesn't have the normal progression. And it does lead me to think that the killing initially was incidental to his main game of making money
Yeah,
through criminal means.
Yeah, means to an end.
And so, but then obviously developed a taste for it.
He escalated. He escalated no different than others have escalated.
We actually missed out on something that someone asked about earlier. He did actually marry a third time. I forgot about that completely, and I'm sorry. Because I was just thinking about his relationships with his wives. His first wife, he was apparently not very nice to. His second wife, Myrta, he had a baby with her, Lucy, and apparently he was lovely to them. Apparently she just thought he was great. He was a very attentive father. But he did then, I'm just going through my notes and I can't believe
Didn't he kill Lucy?
No, there's no evidence he did anything to murder Lucy.
Okay.
I am sorry I missed this, and I now can't find out who his third wife is. But yeah, he was married to 3 people at the same time.
Well, that was one that was asked before we were on the air, too. Yeah. So.
Sorry about that. I can't find the third woman's name. I'm sorry.
Georgiana?
That might have.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. I could check in the book now, couldn't I?
Oh, you've got your book.
Of all things.
Oh, Devil in the White City. Let me see here. Running a little slow as we progress. I need some more fuel to the brain. Caffeine, of course.
So you've already told us the White City part of the title in that, but the devil part of it comes from something he said when he was actually giving his confession.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he actually said that he believes he no longer has anything human in him. He said he's gradually turning into a devil, head, tail, and all. And I think he also said at one point that he was born with the devil standing beside him.
Oh, I thought it was the devil in me. Was that quote? Maybe not.
Oh, okay. I thought it was beside him when he was born.
Um,
But he also said, regarding his appearance after he'd been in prison, he actually claimed that his physical appearance was changing and he was actually turning more into the devil.
in another entry, this is from Devil in the White City, page 353. Holmes's diary. In another entry, he described a visit from his latest wife. This is 1895, Georgiana Yoke.
Okay, that's the third. Yeah, that must be the third one.
Yep, she has suffered, and though she tried heroically to keep me from seeing it, it was of no avail. And in a few minutes to again bid her goodbye and know she was going out into the world with so heavy a load to bear caused me more suffering than any death struggles can ever do. Each day until I know she is safe from harm and annoyance will be a living death to me.
That's very emotional for him.
It is.
And kind of
Weird.
caring, weirdly caring.
Yeah. Really strange.
That he never exhibited that to anybody else.
And here's a letter he wrote to Carrie Peitzel. I was
Yeah.
as careful of the children as if they were my own, and you know me well enough to judge me better than strangers here can do. Ben would not have done anything against me or I against him any quicker than brothers. We never quarreled. Again, he was worth too much to me for me to have killed him if I had no other reason not to. As to the children, I never will believe until you tell me so yourself that you think they are dead or that I did anything to put them out of the way. Knowing me as you do, can you imagine me killing little and innocent children, especially without any motive?
Oh my God, he really was very convincing, wasn't he?
Huh?
Yeah.
The lying, maybe, and the desperation, knowing he's going to hang? I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. It's weird. I've got
Well, there could have been a sociological reason for being, let's just assume he's a total sociopath, which all the evidence points to that. And so
Mm-hmm.
he never actually cared about children. But, harming children has always been a big no-no in society, and even more so in the 19th century. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if reputation was important to him, and it does appear to be, um, he might have denied harming children just because he didn't want that stigma on him.
It very well could be.
Well, it's funny you say that because remember you mentioned his memoir. So he actually wrote his memoir the second time he was in prison. The first time he was in for a short time, when he was kind of the celebrity for all his insurance scams, it was still, ha ha, look at this guy. But the second time he wrote his memoir, and it was called Holmes's Own Story, in which the alleged multi-murderer and arch conspirator tells of the 22 tragic deaths and disappearances in which he is said to be implicated. And he said in this, he claimed to be but a very ordinary man and asserted that to have planned and executed the stupendous amount of wrongdoing that has been attributed to me would have been wholly beyond my power. So even this is in September. So even a couple of months before he's gonna, like, he's already pretty much been indicted at this point. He's still
Yeah.
denying absolutely everything. And but then, the following year, when the Hearst Corporation pays for this story of his, he admitted to the murder of over 100 people, and then he later changed it to 27, and then some of those people were alive, and it's just, you really can't trust anything the guy says.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Well, that's pathological liar there.
Yeah.
Well, a lot like Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole again.
Hmm.
So they were also very famous for their crimes when they were in prison. They had, police beating a path to their door to get
Right.
things solved. And of course, people, in the general populace and in the prison itself, looking at them saying, hey, these guys killed 600 people. They're
Right.
heroes. Look at what
And
they got away with.
the changing of the story with Holmes, I think it tracks with him, uh, you know, wanting to look good. Um, and oddly enough, changing the numbers, changing his story actually tracks with that because in that moment, what is it that's going to make him look the best? At first, it's denying everything. Then it's, well, I'm screwed, so let's claim some giant number and become even more famous.
Hmm.
But then something happens and he's got to tone it down. Um, So, that's typical of a pathological liar is, you know, what am I going to say so that I am, you know, things go the best for me at this moment.
At
A
this
very
point, yeah.
situational
Very
morality.
completely situational.
Hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if they buried him back under all that cement.
I wonder where they buried him. That's one thing I didn't look at.
They probably buried him in the same
Well,
place.
they buried him under the cement. That-
But I'm just wondering if they put all the cement back when they reinterred him.
Yeah, I don't know.
They respected his wishes the first time, even though he was a confessed murderer and he was hanged, and they realized he had probably killed more people than he admitted to. They still gave in to his last wishes, which is very strange.
Place of burial, Holy Cross Cemetery, Lansdowne, Pennsylvania.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Where's the tie-in with Pennsylvania, though, besides the
yeah.
Peitzels? I thought the only tie-in there. Philly.
I think
That's,
so. Was he? Maybe that was where he was hanged.
It could be just where he was in
Oh
prison,
yeah,
too,
yeah. He was. Yeah, no,
I
he was in
guess.
prison. Hang on a sec. I've got the name of the prison here. I don't even know if I can.
It wouldn't be Eastern State Penitentiary, would it?
No, I don't know. It might be now, but it's at the time it was called Moyamensing Prison in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's
Yeah, Moyamensing.
they might have changed the name. I don't know.
I thought that was different from Eastern State, but let me
Um,
look.
I've been to Eastern State actually. We've been there for Halloween. They do a really good haunted house.
Yeah, it's supposedly pretty haunted. I think Capone was incarcerated there too, at
Yeah, I've
Eastern
got.
State.
It's weird. I took pictures when we were there. Just we were on just a tourist thing, not for the Halloween thing. And I took pictures down one of the like one of the branching off halls that you're not supposed to go down. And I got them back, and there's like weird hazy shapes in the picture that weren't there when I took it. It's really weird.
Yeah, I guess they are both in Philadelphia, but they're separate.
They're separate. Okay.
Uh-huh. Let's see, that is 1400 South 10th Street is Moyamensing, and Eastern State is 2027 Fairmont Avenue.
Is Moyamensing still there? They're still using it?
A good question. Looking for that. I don't exactly trust this source, though. It's just Wikipedia. Moyamensing Prison. Demolished in 1968.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, guys. And that is our tale of Mr. H.H. Holmes Mudgett.
He,
Yeah.
he was
Mudgett. That's the name he deserves, is Mudgett.
he
Isn't
really
it?
he really is good value for money, this guy though, isn't he?
Oh, there's so
He's a
many things
cad.
about this guy. So many things. It just keeps. This guy
About
has
Mudgett.
so many facets to his story.
Mudgett, the multifaceted killer.
I'm still astounded that he built an actual hotel with hundreds of rooms with killing chambers. I just cannot believe he did that.
Well, it's and as clever as it is, it's pretty damning when it comes to evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
didn't kill people. So what are all these things in your house about?
Why do you have the
Oh.
gas chamber, Mudgett?
Yeah.
Oh, just
Why do you have
or
an
just
why do you have an acid vat and a lime pit?
just as sorry, I forgot to mention the caretaker of the hotel after Holmes was hanged. A few years later, he actually ended up shooting himself in the head, and his last words were that he couldn't sleep.
Dang.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of sort of a little bit of a downer for the ending. But yeah, there you go. That's the tale of Mr.
His
Holmes.
last victim.
Didn't he inspire a character in American Horror Story Hotel?
He did, yes. The owner of the Cortez, so the Cortez Hotel is based very loosely on his castle, and I don't remember the name.
Also a famous hotel in L.A. I can't remember. I think maybe it was the Cecil. I think it was the Cecil Hotel that it was based on in L.A.
Oh, it's based on a couple of them, and you can actually go to the place where they filmed it, and it's still like a very famous Art Deco hotel. But then the idea of the Holmes character is one of the characters in the show, and there's one night they have Devil's Night, and all the serial killers come in and have dinner with them, and the whole idea. And he goes into a little story about how back in the 30s, how he put the hotel together, and he had all these different people working on it, and so it's based on Holmes, definitely.
HH Hotel.
It's really good, actually. It's one of my favorite seasons. They did a really fantastic job on that one.
Which
Yeah, it
season
was the
it?
Cecil. The Cecil is where they shot it.
Okay, that's the hotel. Yeah, that's on my list of places to visit next time I'm in LA.
That has a really interesting history all its own, too. There was one girl who was in there who was on video and she vanished. And they still haven't figured it out, but she ended up in a water vat on the hotel's roof.
The one in the elevator?
Yeah.
That's creepy. That's a creepy video.
They still can't figure out how she ended up in that water vat.
I remember that. Yeah, that was bloody creepy.
Strangled and put in there, if I'm not mistaken, was the cause of death.
Well, I'll just nip into the lobby and nip out again. I don't think I want to stay there.
It's a beautiful building.
Disappeared like on camera?
Yeah, I'll have to dig up the video.
There's some throwaway comment about drinking the water. It tastes like dead girl.
Yep, I'm watching it now. She's afraid to get out of that elevator.
It's frightening, isn't it? It's creepy.
It's about 3 minutes, 59 seconds long, the video.
And that's the last anybody saw of her before they found her up on the roof.
Yep. She gets out, looks around, creepy. She gets back in and then gets back out. Like she's stepping on the wall, like she's scared, like against the wall.
I'll have to watch that after the show.
Anyway.
Okay. That's enough Holmes for tonight. Thank you very much.
That's enough Mudgett. We have officially changed his name to Mudgett. Back to Mudgett.
Back to Mudgett? Okay.
All right, we'll get Becky on the graphics.
Burn in hell, Mr. Mudgett. Hope you're enjoying your roast.
Thank you again, Ms. Kelly Evans, for your outstanding research and contribution to the show.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Yep, I love being here. Thanks very much.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.